Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into NXP semiconductors. We're looking at their performance in 2023. And we've got their annual report with us, so we'll break down their business segments, their financials, and also how they plan to reward those shareholders. So by the end of this, you'll have a really good understanding of where NXP stands, the challenges they're facing, and what the future could look like. Plus, stick around to the end because we're going to leave you with something to think about, a question that goes beyond the report itself and builds on everything we've learned.
Sounds great. Should be interesting to see how NXP handled 2023, especially with all the global economic uncertainty and all the supply chain issues that were happening.
For sure. Let's just jump right in. So the first thing that stood out to me in this report is that NXP operates as a single reportable segment. Now, they're headquartered in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Did you know that they were actually founded back in 2006? But this single segment thing, it's like they're looking at the whole business as this one interconnected machine.
Yeah, you've got a point there. That single segment structure. I think it suggests that that's how NXP's leadership is thinking about things. Making decisions and allocating resources. Across that whole business, it highlights how interconnected everything really is for them.
Okay, so then what are the pieces of this machine? The report breaks down their focus into four main end markets: automotive, industrial and IoT, mobile, and then kind of this catch-all category, communication, infrastructure, and other. They seem pretty optimistic about long-term growth potential in these markets.
Well, yeah, NXP does have a reputation for innovation, so I guess that optimism makes sense. But let's take a closer look at each of those markets, and we can see what they're really dealing with.
Yeah, let's do it. So first off, automotive. I mean, we all know the automotive industry is a huge consumer of semiconductors.
Sure.
But here's something that really surprised me. Even with global vehicle sales, kind of struggling because of the pandemic and supply chain issues, the demand for semiconductors per vehicle has actually increased.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. That's a key trend to watch, I think. Because it suggests that while fewer cars are coming off the assembly lines, the ones that are being produced are becoming much more sophisticated, requiring more chips than ever before. And for NXP, this is a double-edged sword. They benefit from that higher demand per vehicle. But they also have to navigate those same supply chain challenges to meet that demand.
Totally. So speaking of NXP's strategy, in this automotive segment, they're focusing on areas like ADS, electrification, and in-vehicle networking. Do you think that that aligns well with those trends you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. Advanced driver assistance systems, ADS, are becoming more and more common. Same with electric vehicles. And as cars are getting more connected, the complexity of their internal networks grows as well. NXP is clearly targeting areas with high growth potential.
Okay, makes sense. Let's move on to industrial and IoT. This feels like a massive market with so much potential. Everything from smart factories to connected homes, even tiny sensors embedded in everyday objects. So what's NXP doing here?
Well, they're focusing on what they call high-performance edge and media devices, as well as low-power IoT nodes. This highlights a crucial shift in the industry, the rise of edge computing.
Okay, can you explain that a bit more for our listeners?
Sure. Basically, as we connect more and more devices, sending all that data to the cloud for processing creates these bottlenecks. It can be slow, insecure, and bandwidth intensive. Edge computing is trying to solve that by pushing some of that processing power closer to the devices themselves at the edge of the network. And that's where NXP's focus on these high-performance, yet power-efficient devices comes in.
That makes a lot of sense. So they're basically betting on the fact that we're going to be surrounded by even more smart devices in the future.
Exactly, and they want to be the ones providing the brains for those devices.
All right, on to mobile. They're making a big push in mobile wallets. Ultra-wideband, UWB technology, and custom analog solutions. So what's driving their strategy here?
I mean, the mobile market is just relentlessly focused on speed, battery life, and seamless connectivity. And of course, security is paramount. This is where NXP's UWB technology comes in. It offers incredible precision, which makes it ideal for things like secure contactless payments and accurate indoor location tracking. And in a world where everyone's concerned about their data, NXP is positioning itself as a leader in secure mobile solutions.
Interesting. So they're not just providing the chips that make our phones work, they're also shaping the way we use them.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. It's also a smart strategy because it allows them to differentiate themselves in a very crowded market.
Okay. Finally, let's talk about communication infrastructure and other. This one feels a bit like a mixed bag, covering 5G networks, digital communications, and secure identification solutions. What stands out to you here?
Well, the rollout of 5G is a monumental shift for the telecommunications industry. It requires a massive amount of new infrastructure. And that's where NXP comes in. They're providing the chips that power the base stations, the antennas, and all the networking equipment that makes 5G possible. They're also involved in developing advanced radio technologies, like massive MIMO, which basically means using lots of antennas to improve signal strength and data speeds. And they're also using gallium nitride, GM technology, for power amplification, which is crucial for those high-frequency 5G signals.
So they're kind of like the unsung heroes of the 5G revolution, working behind the scenes to make it all happen.
Exactly. And as 5G continues to roll out globally, NXP is well positioned to benefit from that growth.
Okay, so we've covered NXP's 4 main end markets. What would you say is the key takeaway here for our listener?
I think the key takeaway is this. NXP is strategically targeting high-growth areas within these markets. They're focusing on trends like electrification, edge computing, and 5G. They're not just riding the wave, they're trying to stay ahead of it.
I like it. Now that we have a sense of the markets they're targeting, let's dive into the technology that makes it all possible. NXP has this diverse product portfolio. It's not just one type of chip that makes all this happen.
That's right. It's a pretty impressive lineup. I was surprised by the breadth of what they offer.
So where should we start?
The foundation of their portfolio, and really the foundation of the semiconductor industry as a whole, is the microcontroller, or MCU.
Okay, MCUs. I know they're like these tiny brains that control so many electronic devices. Can you break it down a bit more for us? What makes them so important?
Think of an MCU as a mini computer on a single chip. It's got a processor, memory, input, output, peripherals, all integrated together. They're designed to handle specific tasks, like controlling a motor, reading sensor data, managing a display. The list goes on and on.
Right. And NXP has a long history with these. They've been making MCUs for a while.
Yeah, they have. Over 40 years, actually. And I think what sets NXP apart is their focus on scalability. Their MCUs come with a full suite of software and design tools that make it really easy for customers to move between different MCU families as their needs evolve.
So that means a customer could start with a basic MCU for their product and then later upgrade to a more powerful one without having to redesign their entire system.
Exactly. It's a huge advantage for customers, especially in such a fast-paced industry where products are constantly evolving.
It's like future-proofing their designs, which is pretty smart. The report even mentions a specific example, the IMX-RT crossover processors. What makes these stand out?
So the IMX-RT series, it kind of blurs the lines between traditional MCUs and the more powerful application processors. They're built for high performance, but they maintain the low power consumption and the real-time capabilities that are essential for a lot of embedded applications. And they do all of that at an attractive price point.
So it sounds like they're hitting that sweet spot between power and affordability. All right, let's move on to the big guns then. Application processors. These are the things that power our smartphones, tablets, and increasingly the infotainment systems in our cars.
Right. Application processors are designed for running complex software, the operating systems, the apps, the user interface. They're the brains behind all these sophisticated devices we use every day.
And NXP is focusing heavily on automotive applications with these.
They are. They've carved out a niche for themselves in infotainment systems. And digital clusters. Those are the displays that are replacing traditional instrument panels in cars.
So they're betting on the fact that our cars are becoming more like rolling computers, which, I mean, they kind of are these days.
Absolutely. And as those systems become more and more complex, they need more powerful processors to drive them.
Okay, what about communication processors? What do those do?
Think of communication processors as like the traffic cops of the data world. They manage the flow of information within a system, making sure the right data gets to the right place at the right time.
So in a car, for example, a communication processor would handle all the data coming from the sensors, the GPS, the entertainment system, even the communication with other vehicles or infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. They're essential for making sure that all these different systems can talk to each other seamlessly. And you'll find them in a variety of places within a car, like gateways, telematics units, V2X communication systems.
Speaking of communication, you can't have all these systems talking to each other without connectivity chipsets.
Right. Connectivity chipsets provide the physical links, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Ethernet. That allows devices to connect and share information. NXP is actually a leader in automotive Ethernet, which is becoming increasingly important as cars get more connected.
It's like the nervous system of the car, carrying all those data signals around.
That's a great analogy. We can't forget about the analog and interface products.
Okay, I'll admit, these don't sound as exciting as like a powerful processor.
Yeah.
What do these analog and interface products actually do?
You're right, they might not have the same processing power, but they're absolutely essential. They handle the conversion and management of signals. In electronic circuits, converting analog signals to digital and vice versa, amplifying signals, filtering out noise. They're the bridge between the real world and the digital world.
So they're kind of like the interpreters, making sure everyone can understand each other.
Exactly. NXP is actually particularly strong in automotive, analog and interface products. They offer a wide range of solutions, like their integrated 77 gigahertz radar for ADAS, battery management systems for electric vehicles, in-vehicle networking solutions.
Okay, back to the more exciting chips. RF power amplifiers. These are the ones that take those weak radio frequency signals and boost them up so they can reach their destination.
Yep, that's it. They're essential for any wireless communication. You know, your smartphone, your Wi-Fi router, 5G base stations. And NXP is at the forefront of this technology, especially with their gallium nitride-based RF power amplifiers.
Gallium nitride, that sounds pretty high-tech. What's the advantage there?
GaN amplifiers offer superior efficiency and power output, which is really crucial for meeting the demands of 5G networks. They can handle the higher frequencies and wider bandwidths that 5G requires.
So they're like the muscle behind those 5G signals.
Exactly. And you know, with all this connectivity and data flowing around, security is more important now than ever. And that's where NXP's security controllers come in.
These are like the digital bodyguards, protecting our data from all the hackers and cyber attacks out there.
That's a great way to put it. They're designed to protect sensitive data and ensure the integrity of systems. They're used in everything from automotive and IoT applications to banking and identity management.
It's not just about keeping our phones and cars secure. It's about protecting our entire digital lives.
Exactly. And NXP is a leader in security solutions, especially for automotive and IoT. Like their secure element technology is a key component in protecting connected cars from cyber attacks.
Okay, last but not least, we have sensors. These are the components that allow electronic systems to actually sense the physical world around them.
Right. Sensors act as the eyes, ears, and touch of electronic systems. They measure things like temperature, pressure, light motion, basically anything you can think of.
I know sensors are used extensively in cars
Oh,
for things like lane departure warnings, automatic parking, even airbag deployment.
You're exactly right. And NXP offers a wide range of sensors for those applications, including environmental sensors, you know, that measure things like temperature and humidity, and inertial sensors that measure motion and acceleration.
Wow, it's a lot of different products. It's amazing to think that NXP is involved in so many aspects of our technological world. But all these chips, these tiny pieces of silicon, how do they actually get made?
That's a great question. It's a process that involves an incredible amount of precision and technology. In the next part, we'll take a look inside NXP's manufacturing operations and explore how those chips go from raw silicon wafers to finished products that are ready to power our devices.
All right, so we've talked about the markets NXP targets and this incredible technology they produce. But I'm really curious about how those chips actually get made. It feels like this magical process, you know, going from raw silicon to these incredibly complex devices.
It's definitely a complex process. It's this blend of cutting-edge technology, meticulous precision, and global scale operations. The semiconductor manufacturing process is generally divided into two main stages, front end and back end.
Okay, let's break that down. What exactly happens in those two stages?
A front end, that's where the magic happens. At a microscopic level, imagine these silicon wafers, incredibly thin discs, thinner than a human hair, and they're transformed into the foundation of a chip. Intricate circuitry is etched onto these wafers, creating the pathways for electrons to flow. This is where the chip's functionality is born.
So the front end is all about creating those intricate circuits. On the silicon wafers,
Exactly. It involves this mind-boggling series of steps, depositing layers of materials, using photolithography to create patterns, etching away excess material, doping the silicon to alter its electrical properties. It's highly complex, very delicate, requires specialized equipment, and these incredibly clean environments.
wow. And then the back end, that takes those circuit-laden wafers and turns them into the chips we know and love.
Exactly. The back end is all about assembly testing and packaging. So the individual chips are cut from the wafer, tested to make sure that they're functioning correctly, and then encased in those protective packages that allow them to be integrated into electronic devices.
So it's like taking those intricate circuits and turning them into something that we can actually use.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about taking that raw functionality and transforming it into a practical component.
So where does all this manufacturing take place? Does NXP have their own factories?
Oh, they do. NXP has a global manufacturing footprint. They own facilities in the USA, Netherlands, Malaysia, China, Thailand, and Taiwan. They also have a joint venture with TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, one of the world's largest semiconductor foundries, and that's in Singapore.
It sounds like a truly global operation. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, semiconductor manufacturing is a capital-intensive business. Building and maintaining these factories is incredibly expensive, so companies like NXP, they strategically locate their facilities around the world to optimize costs, access skilled labor, and be closer to key markets.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how of NXP's business. Let's dive into the numbers. How did they actually perform financially in 2023?
All right, let's start with the top line revenue. NXP reported total revenue of $13,276 million for 2023. That's a modest increase of 0.5% compared to 2022.
A modest increase. But given all the economic headwinds and supply chain disruptions, it seems like holding steady is kind of a win in itself.
Yeah, it's a good point. The fact that they were able to maintain revenue in such a turbulent environment, I think it speaks to the strength of their market position and their ability to manage those challenges.
All right, let's talk profitability. What was their gross profit margin?
NXP maintained a gross profit margin of 56.9% in both 2023 and 2022.
Wow, that's pretty consistent. What does that tell us?
It suggests that they have a good handle on their costs and pricing, maintaining a stable gross profit margin in the face of, inflationary pressures and all the supply chain volatility. I think that's a sign of strong operational management.
Okay, let's move on to R&D, research and development. How much did they invest in R&D in 2023?
They invested $2,418 million in R&D, which is a significant increase compared to the previous year.
That's a pretty big jump. What's driving that increased investment?
Well, this is a clear signal that NXP is committed to staying ahead of the innovation curve. They're investing heavily in areas like automotive IoT and 5G, areas that are expected to drive significant growth in the coming years.
So they're not just sitting back and enjoying their current success. They're actively investing in their future.
Exactly. They're playing the long game, which is essential in a fast-paced industry like semiconductors.
All right, last but not least, let's talk cash flow. How did NXP perform in terms of generating cash?
They generated a robust $3,513 million in operating cash flow in 2023.
Strong cash flow is the lifeblood of any business. What does that number tell us about NXP's financial health?
It tells us they're in a strong position. Having strong cash flow gives them a lot of flexibility to invest in new technologies, make strategic acquisitions, and, importantly for investors, return value to shareholders.
Speaking of shareholder value, how is NXP rewarding their investors?
They've got a two-pronged approach, dividends and share buybacks. In 2023, they paid out a total of $2,059 million in dividends.
That's a pretty significant return for shareholders. What about share buybacks?
They're actively repurchasing shares as well. Back in 2022, their board authorized a share buyback program of up to $2 billion. And at the end of 2023, they still had approximately $1,536 million left under that authorization.
So they're using that strong cash flow to both reward their current shareholders and potentially increase the value of their shares.
That's right. It's a classic way to create shareholder value, and it shows that they're committed to returning capital to investors.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. NXP's market strategy, their product portfolio, manufacturing operations, their financial performance. What's the big picture takeaway for our listener?
I think the big picture is that NXP is a company that's firing on all cylinders. They're strategically positioned in high-growth markets. They've got a strong track record of innovation. They're financially sound, and they're committed to creating shareholder value.
It sounds like they're well-positioned for continued success. But as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with a thought, something that wasn't explicitly mentioned in the report, but is becoming increasingly relevant for businesses all over the world. Climate change.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. Climate change poses a number of risks to businesses, including those in the semiconductor industry. Extreme weather events could disrupt manufacturing operations or supply chains, and companies are facing growing pressure to reduce their environmental impact.
Exactly. So as you continue to follow NXP's journey, it's worth considering how they're addressing these challenges and integrating sustainability into their long-term strategy. It's not just about financial performance anymore. It's about building a business that's resilient and responsible in the face of a changing world.
Yeah, I agree. It's something all investors should be thinking about.
Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive into NXP Semiconductors. Until next time.